The Steel Hammer, Vladimir Klitschko.
What's up, YouTube world? Boxing versus MMA. It's a question I get asked loads. I have a boxing channel on YouTube called Box Talk. Check that out. I'm a boxing writer by profession and a boxing journalist as well. I work for a number of different TV channels providing boxing content. So I have a fair bit of knowledge on boxing. And like most people now in the world, it seems, I follow a bit of MMA as well. Particularly UFC and Bellator. They're the two biggest that I follow. They're the biggest organisations out there. And they're the ones that I kind of keep a keen interest in. Watch all the big cards, even some of the smaller cards. They feed us with a lot of content. And a lot of people have asked me, should there be a boxing versus MMA debate? Are they not just two different sports? I mean, are they, in particular, like NFL and rugby? I mean, do we compare those two? I think we should compare them a bit. I think they are quite similar. And let's be honest, they're both striking events. A lot of boxers have tried to cross over into MMA, we know that. James Toney had that infamous bout with Randy Couture. A lot of MMA stars have had a start in boxing, like Ross Pearson had a few amateur bouts. I think Conor McGregor also did. There's even that rumour Conor McGregor versus Floyd Mayweather that doesn't seem to be going away. So there's something that connects the two. We definitely know that. And you constantly hear it. Even Amir Khan mentioned, look, Conor McGregor, let's fight, let's talk, let's discuss this. So there's always that comparison between the two, and I think it's worth discussing. Let's look at boxing, and let's look at where boxing began, or should I say, where it began for me, and where it is now. I grew up in the 80s. I'm 35 years old, so I grew up, I was lucky. I grew up on the back end of the likes of Sugar Ray Leonard, Marvin Hagler, and then obviously the continuation of the likes of Mike Tyson. And then throughout the years, the likes of Evander Holyfield, Oscar De La Hoya, Manny Pacquiao, Floyd Mayweather, superstars upon superstars upon superstars. Pay-per-view stars, Roy Jones Jr. And that's not really there anymore, is it? You've got to be honest, that's not there. We're kind of looking for that next big star. With Manny Pacquiao and Floyd Mayweather kind of gone, Manny Pacquiao kind of announced he'll be back, but he's kind of not at his best anymore. You're looking at who's going to take it over, and you're kind of scratching the surface here. Canelo Alvarez, Adrian Broner, Anthony Joshua maybe, Tyson Fury. Who are the big stars out there? And it's those stars now that unfortunately, or fortunately for us as sports fans, are competing with the MMA stars. And when we say MMA, I think we've just got to be very honest, what we really mean is UFC. That's a three-letter word. UFC, Ultimate Fighting Championships. That actually began in 1993, and I remember, like many of you guys around my age demographic, or even older, younger, whatever, would have got DVDs and tapes of some of the first UFC events, and it was almost barbaric. But there was something fun about it. You had the best boxer versus the best wrestler, or at the time the best sumo wrestler versus the best judo practitioner, the best jiu-jitsu guy against the best street fighter. And there's always that kind of tough man image. Who really is the strongest out there? Who is the best out there? And immediately it got an intrigue. But it was bad, it was brutal, it was barbaric, it was banned in countries and states. So it never really took off. And then the Fertitta brothers and Dana White purchased it, and slowly but surely it became more professional. Rules were put in place, judges got better, fighters became more professional, uniforms. And what I mean by uniforms is that we didn't see guys in their judo uniform come in. Everyone kind of looked the same-ish, and slowly but surely it started pecking away at boxing. And that's where we are now. And you kind of look over the years and you think, has it caught boxing up? But not just caught it up, has it surpassed boxing? I think so, and I'm going to tell you why. UFC are in a very fortunate position. Look, there's Cage Rage, there was Pride, there's ONE FC, there's World Series of Fighting, there's Bellator. But really and truly, UFC hold about 97% of the best fighters on the planet. There's a few others in other organisations now. Rory McDonald's won, he's gone to Bellator. Benson Hedden's at Bellator. There's a couple others floating about, but 97% of the best fighters are in one organisation, and that's called UFC. So that makes matchmaking, I wouldn't say easy, but it makes it a lot easier than it is in boxing. And this is why. There is no TV problem. Dana White, the president of the UFC, wants to see a fight. He simply makes a call and says, look, you're fighting him. Simple. There is no let's negotiate a TV deal. There is no negotiate a TV date. The fight's happening, the dates are there, the venue's there, done. Look at boxing on the other hand, and there's numerous promoters now. Not only numerous promoters, there's numerous promoters and there's numerous TV dates and TV channels competing for the best particular fighter. I mean, I'm from the UK, and in the UK alone we have Box Nation. Box Nation has their own TV channel on Sky. We have Matchroom, who is specifically and only works with Sky. There are other ones as well. There's Hennessy Promotions that kind of deal with Channel 5. Now you want to get those fighters to fight each other. Where's the fight going to be shown? That's the problem right there. Where's the fight going to be shown? Why would Box Nation want to show their best product on a Sky platform? Not going to happen. Why would you want to do that? You want to get subscribers to Box Nation. And that kind of goes on around the world. In America it's Top Rank, Al Heyman and Golden Boy, Lou DiBella, Main Events, and that's the problem with boxing right now. You simply can't get the best fighting the best, as we perceive them to be the best anyway, because there's too many negotiation deals. Too much in the way, too much red tape. And that's where boxing suffers. And that's where the UFC has capitalized. As fight fans, and that's what we are, guys. I think every boxing pundit or boxing fan will tell you you're a fight fan, first and foremost. And as a fight fan, you just simply want to see the best fight the best. That's what we wait for, don't we? The best fight the best. Number 1 versus number 2, number 3 number versus number 4. And UFC kind of gives you that, doesn't it? It gives you number 1 versus number 2. It doesn't just give you that. It gives you that in droves. And that's why it's grown so much over the last 2 or 3 years. But let's not just go with what I'm saying. Let's just go with some figures. Let me get these figures for you. I have them on my laptop just so that I don't get it wrong. Alright, so, and this is, pay-per-view is almost an indication. I don't think it's the only indication, but it's a good indication as to simply what people are willing to pay for. And that's what it is, isn't it? It all thrives on what you're willing to pay for. And that's what makes the product even bigger. And that's what UFC has definitely capitalized on the last 2 or 3 years. So I'm going to go for the last 2-3 years here, and we'll look at some of the biggest bouts in boxing, what I consider the biggest bouts in boxing, excuse me, over the last 2 or 3 years. Okay, let's take away Manny Pacquiao versus Mayweather. That was something that I don't think will ever be beaten. That was 4.6 million pay-per-view buys. 4.6 million. Park that for a second. That's ridiculous. All right, so let's look at some of what I would consider the biggest boxing matches of the last 2 to 3 years. Yeah, let's. I don't want to go back any further than that because it gets a bit serious. Far too many. So let's go to the last 2 or 3 years. That's what we're looking at, really. Okay, so all right. Where should we start? Okay, a big one. A big superstar at the time, Manny Pacquiao versus Brandon Rios. 475,000 buys. Not bad, not great, but not bad. Manny Pacquiao versus Timothy Bradley. 800,000. Good number, I'd say that is. Floyd Mayweather versus Marcus Maidana. 900,000. One that shocked me. Miguel Cotto versus Sergio Martinez. Miguel Cotto was, I consider, one of the biggest draws in boxing of the last few years. 315,000 buys. Floyd Mayweather versus Marcus Maidana, the rematch, 925,000. Another big one. Floyd Mayweather, his final fight, supposedly, versus Andre Berto, 500,000. Golovkin, one of the new breed of hopeful superstars on the scene, versus David Lemieux, 150,000. Cotto versus Alvarez, 900,000. And then to one of the fights recently, very disappointing, Terence Crawford versus Victor Postol, unification fight, 140 pounds, 75,000 buys. Alright, let's look at some of UFC recent fights, and this is the last 2-3 years. I'm not going to go any further than that, so I'm not going to go to like UFC 100 or anything like that. So UFC 196, McGregor versus Diaz, 1.5 million. Okay, I do want to add this. UFC never ever release their pay-per-view buys. They just don't do it. So these are kind of numbers by industry insiders. So okay, so UFC again. UFC 196, McGregor versus Diaz, 1.5 million. The rematch, UFC 202, McGregor versus Diaz, trending at 1.5 million. They're expecting it to get near the 2 million mark, which is ridiculous. UFC 194, Aldo McGregor, 1.4 million. But it's not just McGregor here. UFC 200, their big kind of flagship event, 1.2. UFC 193, Rousey versus Holm, 1.1. Which other ones are there? Recent ones. UFC 190, Ronda Rousey versus Beth Correia in Brazil, 900,000. UFC 182, Jones versus Cormier, 800,000. I, for one, don't think pay-per-view buys are an indication of that much, but that just kind of gives you a kind of comparison of the two. That was some of the biggest boxing stars that we have right now and some of the biggest UFC stars, and you can see the pay-per-view numbers are quite ridiculous. I will add this as well. I think UFC do charge a little less on their pay-per-view than some of the boxing events. Not every pay-per-view fight's exactly the same charge, but regardless, you see where they were there. Even Floyd Mayweather only touched $1 million a couple of times in the last 4 or 5 years. What does that mean, people? Let's look at some of their superstars, some of the crossover stars. Yes, boxing did have Floyd Mayweather, but you look after that and you kind of think, who's around? Miguel Cotto, Manny Pacquiao, who are the other big names? I mentioned earlier, Tyson Fury maybe, Anthony Joshua. Are they crossover stars? Are they big stars? Are they as big as the likes of Ronda Rousey? I'm not sure. Conor McGregor, John Jones, even Rampage Jackson at the time when he was fighting. Obviously still is for Bellator, but when he was fighting in the UFC. And then you look at what those crossover stars are doing. Ronda Rousey, Fast and Furious. Got another movie coming out soon. Randy Couture was in The Expendables. What's gone wrong with boxing? Is it a lack of promotion? Has boxing really taken on the social media or anything? I mean, the social media element with Instagram and Twitter and all these things. Has boxing lost some of its best promoters? I mean, I remember back in the day, Don King and Bob Arum were two of the best. You look at some of the promoters now. Al Heyman, manager slash promoter, what's he really doing? Lou DiBella. I think Kathy Dewey does a fantastic job at main events, but again, are they as good, are they as out there as Dana White? I don't think they are. I think boxing's losing sight of sometimes how to promote fighters. One thing that I definitely think boxing's lacking, and it has been lacking for years, is the depth of the cards. You have a main event, and then that's it. It just drops off ridiculously. UFC definitely has a bit more stack in its card. You get a lot more from a UFC event than a boxing event. I guess the question really is, can both exist in the same, if you like, in the same universe? Will someone pay for a boxing event and a couple of weeks later pay for a UFC event? That's the thing. Money's tight nowadays. Everyone's feeling that pinch. And I feel like you put a good UFC event on one night and you put a good boxing event on one night, I think unless boxing really starts stacking cards, unless we really gets the fights we want, people are going to turn over to UFC right now. I mean, I'm in a position where I know a lot about boxing. Look at some of the big fights that we want in boxing. Manny Pacquiao Mayweather took nearly 6 years to make. 6 years. Yes, it's still done great pay-per-view numbers, and maybe the weight done it good, but it took 6 years to make. Gennady Golovkin was supposed to fight Canelo Alvarez. Canelo Alvarez said, you know what, I don't want that fight. That fight's not going to happen really, is it? We're not getting the fights we want, and as a result, fight fans, not boxing fans, fight fans are switching over to UFC. Boxing has a lot to do right now, because I think UFC's winning the so-called battle between the two, but boxing's definitely not dead. Boxing can unearth stars like it always has, but so can UFC. So watch this space. Right now, I think UFC is definitely, and I mean this, definitely bigger than boxing, but I think boxing always has a bright future. And boxing always has the advantage of being in things like the Olympic Games. Mixed martial arts isn't in there. Imagine what happens if mixed martial arts goes amateur and appears in the Olympic Games. Imagine the stars it will unearth then. Right now, what it does is unearth stars from the likes of wrestling and judo and jiu-jitsu tournaments. Imagine in 5 or 6 years' time, it can unearth stars from MMA tournaments. Wow. Alright, there you go, guys. Look, thumbs up, subscribe. Tell me what you think. What do you think is the best out there? Is boxing still #1? Have I kind of exaggerated it a bit? Or is UFC #1? Or do you think they're just completely separate like a lot of people do? Tell me your views. Leave your comments below. I will try and get back to every comment. Remember, you can follow me on Twitter as well, at BoxTalk UK. Also check out my other YouTube channel, Box Talk, as well. And thanks for watching. Peace.